Hey everybody, this is Lisa, aka 80s Child, aka You Brought Me Home Tumblr, coming at you with another charmed episode 5. Okay, like I said before in the last review for episodes 5 and 6, I said I would give it 5 episodes to see if it was coming along at all, and I see little bits and pieces with each episode where it's like they're trying, but it still feels to me more uh, problems and solutions. um, this episode really piqued my interest, although it was more towards the end than the actual storyline. The storyline itself was pretty standard, boring, fair. Nothing about it really stood out except for the twist that wasn't really a twist. That's one of the issues that this show has, is that nothing comes to you as a surprise. The same thing happens to me when I watch the reboot of MacGyver, because I was a huge MacGyver fan when I was a kid back in the 80s. So I know the MacGyver story inside and out. So watch the reboot with Till, it's hard for me to find anything surprising. I mean, sometimes I do when I'm like, oh wow, they recreated that character or that story. But then I go back in my mind and try to see, okay, is this going to live up to what the original series did with this character? Are they going to follow that storyline the way that they're supposed to? And then, when it inevitably doesn't, then I get irritated because, I want them to at least stay true to what that story was. Well, this episode, okay, before we get to the twist that really wasn't a twist that you could see coming from like 50 gazillion miles away, the main storyline has to do with a magical weapon, a scythe, that supposedly is so powerful that it has to be kept in 3 distinct pieces, because if it is not, if it's united together as one weapon, it can cause hell to open up, and it will allow the creatures, the nastiest of the nasty who are in Tartarus, as the sage said on Charmed, when you're talking about a place where demons send their nastiest people, it's bad. So this is a place where even the demons don't like to go, because they send the nastiest of their nasty there as a form of. So it's kind of like, what was it, Charmed season 5? Yeah, when Phoebe had pushed Cole and sent him to that hell realm that he was trying to escape from. It's kind of like that. I'm assuming anyway, if it's as bad as they say, because they didn't actually show us. They do a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. I would have preferred that if they were going to talk about how important it was to keep the weapon intact, to keep the weapon in pieces and not intact, because of how debilitating it would be for all these creatures from hell to escape. You should at least show us some of the creatures, or show us the landscape, show us what it looks like and why it is deemed to be so dangerous. We can't really relate to their fears because we're not seeing what they're seeing. We're not, even the Charmans themselves can't really relate because they don't know what it looks like. At least in the original show, they had the opportunity to go down to the underworld and see how dangerous it really was. That's why it was very rare that they ever went down there, because it's that dangerous, to the point where if they're not careful, they might not come back alive, if at all. So it's kind of hard to get that picture of why it is so important that the pieces were separated and held by 3 distinct people, and why it's so important that the witches make sure they're not united. So at the beginning of the episode, we have what we come to find out is a satyr. He's doing what satyrs do. They're running a wine shop, of course. And he's a bacchanal, so he likes his partying. He runs a winery, and After he makes his sale, he closes his shop for the night, and then he hears a noise, and all you see is a shadowy being. You can't see his face. He's just a shadow of black. And he rips something out of the satyr's gut. And at first you think the satyr, he must be dead if something has been ripped out of his gut. But shortly after the shadowy figure disappears, the satyr shows up at the Charnwood's doorstep. Now, the B story that's going on is, I've noticed as the episodes go on that they all have like some underlying theme, as it were, that the sisters tackle in their human lives while they're also dealing with supernatural issues. And this week's theme was, or I should say last Sunday's theme, was their future. I guess a new semester was starting for Maggie, and she still had not chosen her new classes, and she was actually considering dropping out of college altogether. She felt like she couldn't balance her school life and her personal life with her now that she's not able to be in the sorority yet. She can't seem to balance that aspect of her human life with her witch life. She's having trouble with it. For Mel, she seems to be having trouble balancing as well, since she fucked with time without thinking about it first. She's now dealing with the consequences of her actions. That cushy teaching assistant job she had at the college is no more, because it's never a job in the first place. So she's wound up getting a job at the bar, tending bar. And it's not the best job in the world, but it brings money in, and she has to do what she has to do to get by. And while she's doing that, Harry, who is also her college advisor in the women's studies department, has been egging her to finish her. She doesn't have to finish her thesis itself. She has to finish her thesis. Like, she has to make the presentation of what her thesis is going to be. She has to turn that in, and she's having a lot of trouble, writer's block, stress. She can't seem to come up with any ideas of what to write her thesis about. So this is kind of Mel's struggle about balancing her school life with her personal life and her witchy life. And for Mel, by the end of the episode, she kind of comes to the realization that she feels as though the only reason that she went into the women's studies department or went into college at all was because she desperately wanted to make her mother proud of her, and she wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps. But now she feels as though maybe that is not the road she was meant to be on. Ever since she's found out that she was a witch, it has kind of made her see herself in a different light, see who she is in a different light, and it's helped her to find or sort of realize that she was not possibly on the right path. And that's kind of very reminiscent of what Piper went through, because when the show originally first started, Piper was working as a chef at a restaurant, but she wasn't happy. She'd always wanted to own her own restaurant, but it didn't seem like that was ever going to get anywhere, and she was at the beck and call of the head chef, whom she thought was a complete asshole. So by the end of the first season, she was tired of dealing with it, and she left the restaurant entirely, and that's when she opened up P3. So her life kind of went down a different road, and P3 was a big deal for her. It showed her what she was capable of. It showed that, the three sisters could own this business and be successful, and it really solidly helped Piper to see what she was capable of. I mean, obviously we all know that after the end of the series, she wound up selling P3 and actually opening up that restaurant that she'd always dreamed of. But she wouldn't have been able to get to that point in her life if she didn't realize that she could own a business, that she could be successful by owning P3, and dealing with all of the mess that went with owning that business and booking the acts and almost dying from poison from a fruit that had a a horrible bug in it. Dealing with all the witchy stuff that comes with it, balancing that life, And now this is, I think it's kind of like Mel's turn to figure out how she's going to balance her life and where she fits. She used to think that the women's studies department was where she belonged, but ever since she found out she was a witch, she started to realize that that's not necessarily so. So by the end of the episode, she has decided to drop out of school and do something entirely different. What that entirely different thing is, I don't know. But all we know for sure is that the college is not where she feels she needs to be. And Macy also has a big change in her life as well. This is a really interesting episode to see Macy's growth. If you remember from the last episode, the head of the lab was murdered. Of course, I'm guessing they obviously covered it up or something. So the owners of the company that have a lab, and now that the position of head of the lab, the woman wants Macy to take it. She's been watching her, and she believes that Macy is really good at her job and that she has the potential to be a great leader. She would like her to step up and show some leadership. And part of that, by taking the job, is knowing where to trim the fat, as it were. They're trying to scale down their expenditures, and by doing so, she believes that they need to get rid of some unnecessary workers who are too expensive to keep on, aka Galvin. As soon as she was promoted, that did not come as a surprise to me at all. Like, this show does not know how to say this. As soon as she walks in there and we find out that this lady wants to give her this job, beyond a shadow of a doubt, she's going to have to fire Galvin. I mean, what other roadblock would she have to deal with that would be a big deal for her life, for her personal life? Having to fire her ex/friend. So she's got to figure out, how am I going to do this? I want this job, but I don't want to lose Galvin. So she tries to broach the subject with him over coffee, but he gets called away to work. One of the lab techs needs his help with something, and that's when she realizes that Galvin might be more expensive, but he's expensive because he's worth it. And it has nothing to do with their relationship personally. It has to do with the fact that Galvin knows his shit. Galvin is a good worker. He stays late. He offers to help. He volunteers. He knows how to do his job. He works hard. And you shouldn't dismiss someone just because they work hard. It brings a great deal of worth to this lab. So the next scene you see is she walks up to one of the other lab techs who's sitting on his ass with his feet up, drinking, a soda and popping some chips in his mouth and not doing shit. So yeah, that dude is not long for that lab, I'm sure. It's better to treat the people that you need and make your lab suffer for it, because it's definitely been a negative for the lab's ability to be productive. Galvin is a major part of that. So she showed a great deal of leadership by getting rid of the right person, keeping the right person, also standing up to the boss. That's part of being a leader, is knowing when to speak your mind, knowing when to question what leadership wants and how to broach that in a way that won't come off as being, callous or cruel, but making your point. So I have a feeling this is going to be a big deal for Macy and but this leadership position, the only thing is, because the woman represents the new owners of the lab, and we already know that the new owners of the lab are demonically inclined, I'm afraid that they're setting her up for failure, and that they're putting her in this light so they can take her down. I remember what happened with Prue, and she was ready to get a promotion in season 1, and this was a big deal job for her, working at the auction house, and then when she found out that her boss was a demon from hell and his sidekick was a hell beast, I mean, it affected her so deeply that she decided by the end of season 1 she didn't even want to. Well, no, it took about halfway through season 2, but I mean that was definitely a contributing factor to her realizing that she was wasting herself working at this place when she could be doing something that she actually enjoyed, namely the photography thing. But anyway, so that's the little B story between the three girls, them kind of figuring out their place in the world and where they feel they need to be and how they fit, which is good. You know, they need that kind of character development. You can't, even though this is a supernaturally themed show, you can't rely completely on the supernatural stuff. Like I said many times before, the show needs to have a decent amount of character development for it to work. They must be doing something good somewhere, because at this point they've already been picked up for a full season order, so they're obviously doing something good. So again, the show needs to work on its twists. That you could see that stuff with Galvin coming a mile away. They really need to work on the writing a little bit better. But you know, I can chalk that up to first season bugs that need to be worked out. Any first season of a show, you know, it takes time to work out the bugs in the writing and get yourself solid. Remember, this is only 7 episodes in. You can't expect them to be perfect. That being said, like I said, the main storyline has to do with the Scythe. So I assumed that the satyr was dead, but then I remembered having seen the promo beforehand and then him showing up at the doorstep, which he does. And he's dying. But Harry manages to save him and bring him back. Funny enough, even though Harry's moved out of the house because he's been told by the elders he doesn't need to be there, they've given them their book back, he's constantly there. Like, he's making them breakfast, and he's always there. He's there more than Leo was when he was living there. Like, honestly, I think he's become incredibly attached to these three. He doesn't act like it at times, but it seems like he's become really, really attached. And I'd like to think that's because he's lonely. He doesn't have much beyond the women's studies department and the girls. I don't know if he has any other charges. They've never shown him going off to anybody else. So, I mean, we always knew that the charmed ones were not Leo's only charges. He had others. That's part of the sticking point that was between Piper and Leo, was that he was always leaving to work to go to take care of his other charges, and he wasn't around enough. The halfway point of season 2, they broke up, sort of, because it didn't seem like they were able to make it work. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Harry go off to another charge. I don't even know if he has another charge beyond them. I still wish that they had waited a little bit longer before they introduced Harry into the picture. I still feel like he's constantly there, way too much, explaining everything, telling them how to fight stuff, how to fight demons, how to vanquish demons, and it detracts from their ability to be who they are. And how it detracts from their ability to develop as strong characters, as strong witches. The girls only needed Leo when it was dire. They didn't need Leo for everything. And yes, I know there are quite a few episodes where this point is stuck, where where sometimes they act like, what would we do without Leo around? Leo. But that was much farther down the line after Paige had shown up, and honestly, the showrunner was different, the writers were different, and I mean, everybody knows that after season 4, the show kind of, took a nosedive. But seasons 1 through 4 just those. When Constance Burge was still there, she really understood and strong witches by not constantly having Leo there to do everything for them. That's why she didn't introduce him until at least halfway through season 1. And even then, it took them time to come to terms with who and what he was. And they still didn't rely on him for everything, on him for healing stuff, but not a whole lot. Most of it, and them vanquishing demons, was their own work. Going through the book, reading it. Again, read the fucking book, read the fucking book. Every time I see them meet a demon or a fantastical being and they have this deer in the headlights look, I just want to slap the shit out of all 3 of them. It feels to me like they just don't care about who and what they are. I think Maggie and Mel have maybe read a little bit more, but Maisie, other than the first time, she hasn't really read much of the book from a witchy perspective. When she read it from a scientist's perspective, trying to debunk it all and figure out how to logically explain it. She wasn't reading it from the perspective of, this is my heritage, this is who I am, and really absorbing it. That's how the girls learned. Reading every time that a demon or a warlock came to, to mess with them. They wrote their own notes in there. All the little things that they tried, the new potions, the different spells, everything went in there. I don't know if these girls are doing that or not, and it really annoys the shit out of me because I'm tired of seeing them have to depend on Harry for every fucking thing in the world. So the satyr comes and tells them that his piece of the scythe has been stolen, that he is a protector of one of the pieces, that many, many thousands of years ago, this was broken up into 3 pieces because it was so dangerous, and it was given to 3 charges to hold on to it in perpetuity. So those 3 had it, and then when their time was up, it was given to another 3, and on down, and on down. So now that the first piece has been stolen, they know that this darkness, this dark creature, is probably going to go after the second piece. After having a night of debauchery with the satyr, because why the hell not? As a matter of fact, this is the first time that they've actually introduced a creature of fantasy into the show. Prior to this, it's all been demons, and it's very static. Like, there's very little difference between them. They're all kind of cut from the same cloth, so there's very little distinction between the demons that appear on the show, which is another thing to the detriment. What was really great about the original Charmed was that all the characters were very distinct. They had a very distinct look, very distinct powers, very distinct everything, which made each and every one of them very different. And you can see that if you ever look through the book Shadows, all the pictures. In this, they all are kind of the same. Like, there's no difference between them, and it just makes you not give a shit. So after their night of debauchery with the satyr, they're trying to stick to their normal life pattern. That's what Harry tells them to do: go to work, go to school, whatever. And while Mel is at the bar trying to write this master's thesis work, she's approached by a pretty young woman who appears to be hitting on her, and she just assumes that that's what the woman's doing, and the woman gives her advice to not give up on her work, that it will come to her. And she's flattered a little, but it's a little too soon after Nico. So the woman leaves, and they realize that they need to find who has the second one. eventually they do. It turns out to be a woman who works at a museum, but in reality, she's an Egyptian fertility goddess. And it's funny that they at first think she's another satyr, and she's like just trying to show her that respect. And he's also fairly embarrassed by the fact that the girls have no idea who or what she is. So they're not treating her with the respect that she would normally be afforded for her title. And he's like, I'm sorry. They're new. They shouldn't be this fucking new. It's been months. They should know that an Egyptian fertility goddess exists, if nothing else. Especially someone like Mel, who's in the women's studies department and has probably studied this type of thing before. Anyway, that's just another tip-off to me that they still have not read this book through. Or if they have, they haven't remembered shit. I mean, why would you have to when all you have to do to follow is open it up and say, show me this? And boom, the book just opens up right to that page. You know, I know that when the book feathered back and forth in the original Charm, that we all knew that it was Grams doing that for them. But she didn't do it all the time. She only did it when it was really important that the girls needed something like dire. Otherwise, she pretty much left them to their own devices to do what they needed to do. So the Egyptian fertility goddess wears her piece around her neck as a charm. And when they approach her, the darkness demon is also there, and they get into a scuffle, and the demon gets his hands on the second piece. So now it has two pieces. It only needs one more to make this scythe complete. And the most interesting thing happens. When they go home, they realize that they're being followed. As they're in the house, the three of them and Harry, they notice the outside of the house is swarming with bugs. And that's when they realize that the third piece is in the house. They don't like the idea of allowing bugs in the house, but if they're ever going to find the third piece, they're going to have to let the bugs take them to where the third piece is. This is where we find out, interestingly, that Harry has a phobia of bugs. So they let the bugs in, and the bugs all swarm up to the attic. Big surprise, right? It leads them to a box that's been hidden in one of the walls. Apparently, their mother was the holder of the third piece. Another interesting thing that happens is that when they scuffled for the second piece, the demon lashed out and hit Mel. And she had this big spidery looking, veiny looking bruise on her shoulder. Harry was going to take care of it for her, but when they realized that it was the same bruise their mother had when she was killed, Mel didn't want him to touch it because, according to her, it makes her feel closer to her mom, knowing that this, whatever this was, is the same creature. Probably. So, open the box, the third piece is there, and they're trying desperately to keep all three pieces from coming together. And while they're doing that, you remember the end of the last episode, Macy found that hidden box in the pillar outside the house, and inside the box was a key, and she put it around her neck? Well, the key started getting attracted to the scythe. They desperately tried to keep the scythes from coming together, but the demony creature wound up infiltrating. Not only that, but the young woman who was flirting with Mel at the bar also showed up at the house, and it turns out she was also a demon. And she was primarily the one who was trying to get her hands on that scythe. Every time one of the pieces of the scythe came together, an earthquake would occur, meaning more demons would be let loose from Tartarus. So they're trying to prevent this from happening. So because they're stuck in this scuffle, they're not able to keep the scythe from coming together, and it does. And when it does, that's when the key around Macy's neck starts acting up. And she's pulled towards it, because the key is apparently what activates the scythe, unbeknownst to Macy or the rest of them. It rips itself from her neck and embeds itself into the scythe, basically turning the scythe on. And you see the house rumble, so you know that Tartarus is definitely opening up. And this is when the demon chick gets her hands on it and disappears. Also, the darkness demon, the one no one can see, the one whose face no one can see, also disappears. So apparently the woman, the demon chick, was the one that was gathering all the pieces. The darkness demon was there for a completely different reason, which I will get to shortly. So the girls are like, you know what? That's it. I'm fucking done. So they work with Harry, and they come up with a spell to contain the demon so they could get the scythe back. At first, it sort of works. And it's really good for once seeing the girls really get down into the nitty-gritty of their witchcraft. It feels like finally they're starting to embrace what they are and who they are. So at the end of the day, they do manage to stop the demon chick, vanquish her, and get the scythe back. But it's already formed, and they can't unform it. So, between the realization that their mother, and then the fact that Macy was hiding this key from them, and then the fact that the girls were hiding from her, the fact that their mother was afraid during her pregnancy, you know, when they went back in the past and saw that she was pregnant, she was scared there was something wrong with the baby. And the whole deal with Macy's darkness, yeah, they're all hiding things from each other that they really shouldn't be hiding. So by the end of the episode, they all come clean about it, and they decide that they're not going to keep secrets from each other anymore. But, you know, I have a feeling that's not going to last, especially with the last that occurs at the end. The twist that really wasn't a twist. So throughout this episode, Maggie and Parker are kind of kindling a sort of relationship, which initially I was for. I felt like I didn't understand why Parker was with the other chick, because they didn't have anything in common whatsoever. Like, nothing. He seemed to have much more in common with Maggie, and they had a spark right off the bat. So he took her on a date, and it was low-key, you know, and she was happy with it, and everything was great. But when she kissed him, she read his thoughts, and in those thoughts, he was saying that he was afraid of telling her the truth, that he had to keep something from her. And the last thing that Maggie needs is somebody else who's keeping secrets, you know? So when she goes over to the frat house that he lives in to see him, she finds him in his room injecting himself with something. And she gets the wrong idea. At first she thinks he's doing drugs. And she's incredibly upset. And she's like, I don't want to deal with you. If you're doing drugs, forget it. But he comes over to her house and tells her that she got the wrong idea. that he's not a drug addict, that he has some sort of incurable, very rare autoimmune disease that requires injections, and he just didn't know how to tell her because he was afraid of how she would take it and how she would react. And of course, Maggie's sympathetic. Oh, you should have told me. We could have sat down and talked about it. You didn't have to keep that from me. Blah blah blah. And she gives him a hug and a kiss, and they seem to be happy. And then, da da da! In the very last scene of the episode, you see in the lab office the guy, big demon bad guy, the one that had the paint can, who has been trying the entire episode to open up the paint can but hasn't been able to do it. And it was part of the reason why he wanted Macy's blood, because he thought maybe it would be the catalyst that he needed to open up the paint can. But basically, evil demon dude is talking to the darkness demon, the one whose face that no one can see because it's all shrouded in black. Castigating him for his failure at dealing with the charmed ones and making sure that they didn't get hands on the side and blah 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 blah. And when the darkness demon's face finally comes into focus, you realize, da-da-da, it's Parker. Now, when Parker and Maggie were on their date, Parker had told Maggie that he was not really close to his family because his father, he always felt like he could never live up to his father's expectations, that his father wanted certain things for him in his life, but that Parker's feelings were vastly different. And that his father wanted him to be somebody that he didn't really want to be. It's not until you see Parker talking to Demon Dude and you realize that Parker is a demon himself that you realize what direction this is going. And it should be very obvious for anybody different, because in the original Charmed, Cole, yes, was a half demon, but it wasn't his father that was the demon. His mother was a demon. His father was human. And that was, if you continue to watch the episodes with Cole and his relationship with the Triad, you realize after time why it is that Cole had agreed to work for the Triad in the first place. And it wasn't just necessarily because he hated witches. It was because they were holding something precious to him. And they told him that if he wanted it back, that he would do whatever they said, including killing the charmed ones. And that precious thing that they were holding was his father's soul. He really didn't have much of a relationship with his father, but that was because his mother took him when he was a child away from his father, whom he loved very, very much. And that's when you realize that Cole is not everything that they say he is. That the Balthazar part of him is not necessarily the part of him that he likes. It's the part of him that he was stuck with. He's actually very much more in tune to the human side of himself. And his father's soul was the most precious thing in his world next to Phoebe. Meaning that human part of him is also very important to him. So Parker's, it's kind of the same deal, but in reverse, because his father's a demon. Obviously his mother is not. So apparently his brother had already dealt with the charmed ones at one point. I don't know who his brother was supposed to be, but he failed. And I think that might have been the shapeshifter. I think. Who was stuck in the paint can, and that's probably why he's trying to get the paint can open. No, the Harbinger is in the paint. What am I talking about? The Harbinger is in the paint can. But I think the shapeshifter was the one who was supposed to be the brother. Parker's like, Father, I tried, but it just didn't work, They're too powerful, blah, blah, blah. And he's castigating him and yelling at him for being a failure. And that's when you realize, oh, God, it's Cole all over again. I'm interested to see what's going to happen when she finally figures it out. if it's going to go down like it did with Phoebe, because if it goes down like it did in the original Charmed, he's doomed. He's fucking doomed. um, even if they have a relationship or whatever, we all know how things ended between Cole and Phoebe, so this can't be good. It can't be anything good, and it's sad to me because I actually kind of liked Parker. He seemed like a decent guy, but and you can tell he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. He's obviously much more in touch with his human side. That part of him is important to him, and he doesn't want to do the things that his father does, but he feels like it seems like he doesn't want to disappoint his father, even though he doesn't agree with what his father's doing. So I guess we will see how that goes as the season wears on. If this is their way of tackling that Cole subplot, oh my god! I just hope that they realize where the original show went wrong as far as Cole and his relationship with Phoebe, and they try not to go down that same road. Because what those girls put Cole through, well, I don't have the words. I'll just turn that one over to Obscurus, Lupa, and Phaelus. Well, Obscurus, she puts it pretty well in her Charmed season reviews when she discusses the travesty that is the relationship between Phoebe and Cole, and the shit that they put him through. When you get to the point where your character is so desperate to die, so desperate to die, and the girls are so horrible that they won't even let him die in peace, you know your show has a problem. I sincerely hope that it doesn't go down that road with Maggie and Parker. I think they could do a lot better. I'm hoping that since Constance Burke does have a producing credit, at the very least, that she might be able to lend her expertise to that particular storyline and make sure that it doesn't go down that same path. I think that the show could do a lot better now. Now that, hindsight being 2020 and all, now that they have those episodes to work from, they can understand where the negatives were and not follow that same path. Well, anyway, that's out of Scythe. It was okay. The demon wasn't anything special. It was pretty much the same as all the rest. That's seems like what the demons are on this show now. They're all pretty much carbon copies of each other. It was interesting to see some fairy tale type characters come in, like the Scythe and the Egyptian fertility goddess, but you don't really get to see them in their natural habitat. The most you saw of the satyr was a little bit of his hoof in one scene. And I don't know if that's the show trying to save money on special effects or what, but I mean, this is a fantasy show about magic. You should try to show a little bit more of the fantasy aspect. If not, it's just going to feel like a very watered down version of Supernatural, honestly. And yeah, that's not what Charm should be. Out of 10, I would say probably 5 or 6. I mean, it wasn't anything special. It was just ho-hum. Except for the non-twist at the end that I'm sure everyone saw coming. So, I think they might have maybe 1 or 2 more episodes left before the show goes off for the winter break. And then we'll probably come back in January. Yeah. In January. So I'll review what I can until the show takes its break. And then I might move on to something else to bide my time until January. Oh, I will be uploading the unboxing video for the Nintendo at some point. I've got to find some better Wi-Fi to do that. I can't do it here because the Wi-Fi is too slow. But yeah, so that is episode 7, and I will talk to you guys later. I hope episode 8 is decent. We shall see. And, well, that's all for now. Bye, guys.